Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development, and I'm joined by my co-host and good friend,
Tommy Lewis, President and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tommy. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm glad to be back in the saddle after missing last week. I did
Absolutely.
take a look at the show. Fantastic guests,
Yeah.
great, rich conversation, but I'm glad to be back.
Right. And we're so glad to have you back, man. And I had a special treat last week because I had my youngest on the show and he kind of impressed me. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. The apple don't fall that far from the trees.
No, sir.
But we certainly missed you, man. And so glad to have you back. And there's so many things that have transpired that continue to transpire in the world. Why don't we start by just kind of talking about how was your week, man? Or your last couple weeks?
Last couple of weeks, man, we're still plugging away, trying to bring value to our clients. We're doing a lot of work still, Eric, with these school districts, right? Working with our administrators and teachers and our students, K through 12, around equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as systemic equity. So, really taking a look at the curriculum from K through 12 that our students are being exposed to, taking a look at the mindsets of our teachers as they are engaging with diverse students. And it's not just racially or from a gender identity or sexual orientation perspective, it's also including just learning styles, students with any types of disabilities, also with socioeconomic, and more so, Eric, what we're learning over the last year and what we've been doing over the last 2 weeks specifically is this COVID pandemic has exposed a lot of inequities in our educational systems and processes. And not just education, but we know on a corporate and business side as well. And so what that looks like is as our students are at home learning virtually, there's an increase in stress, anxiety, depression, as well as the teachers' biases when they actually see the students in their homes, apartments, condos, and their interactions with their parents, right? So their parents are yelling, cussing, hovering, sticking their head in the camera saying, I didn't learn math that way back in 75 or 70 or 65. And it is influencing our teachers' mindset with regards to the students, therefore increasing the gap of inequality. Right. That's what my last 2 weeks have been about, and really working with some school districts around creating 3 to 5 year systemic equity curriculum and plans. We're doing great work. It is arduous, difficult work, but it's work that's needed, and it's work that I'm glad to Make It Plain is a part of. That's how my last 2 weeks have been.
Wow. Tommy, let me ask you this. It looks like, and so you and I, it's hard to be a stronger champion or a louder voice to say that what you and I are trying to work with organizations with, how critical this work is. And when I'm not talking about how critical you and I are. I'm talking about how critical these conversations are. And when organizations, or if organizations don't really give it the kind of attention and priority that is needed, there's no way to get around the penalty and the cost of not doing this well, is it?
No, there's not. There's not. And in a smart company, smart leaders in the company, they take a look at their SWOT analysis, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what their opportunities are, and then what the threats are. So when this work is not done well, when there's not real financial, human, and systemic investments in this work, the threat of poor branding, loss of customers, loss of talent and thought leadership in organizations, because people do have choices to leave companies, and sometimes that is that decision to leave is not, I quit. It's I've had enough with what I'm experiencing in this work environment, and I'm going to email folks to say, stop doing it. We're going to talk about that a little bit,
Right.
right? And there are folks that are doing that. Those folks have quit because they're sick and tired of it, and it's a threat, right? It's a threat, and the threat is, for a business perspective, Eric, the threat of losing market share,
Right.
the threat of losing revenue, right? In a world pandemic. So it's not like, forget those 2 or 3 clients that have brought in $1 million or even $1 billion each. We'll get them back. Nope. That one person who had that one relationship with that client has decided later for you all, you're not really doing diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm out. And that energy, that thought leadership, innovation almost leaves with them. That's a threat.
And the thing is, Tommy, you and I cannot underscore how critical it is when you get this wrong. And we see companies sometimes make, whether it's a conscious or unconscious calculation as to what amount of investment can I make in this inclusion and diversity work, that's sort of a minimal level, in order to get us across the threshold that we can say that this is important to us. The problem with that, and you and I sort of say it often, is that if you don't do this right, you leave yourself exposed in so many other ways. And that exposure can ultimately cost you. And I've got a couple of clients that's happening with them right now. Clients that are good people, Tommy. These are good people who have gone at diversity and inclusion, and in many ways have even convinced themselves of its meaningful priority to them. But I was doing some coaching this last week, and the young lady said, I feel like our organization likes to show inclusiveness while remaining exclusionary.
Wow.
All our efforts are about presenting that we're inclusive.
Yeah.
And so that was deep, man. And so then we went on into a conversation about how well you see what does the organization really value? What don't they value?
Yep.
Now okay, so let's look at all of that. I mean, that's the kind of conversation I had this week, Tommy. Let's just look at the organization for what it is in all of its brokenness. And then let's make the calculation, recognizing that 85% of full-time workers around the globe don't like their jobs. 75% hate their bosses. So let's just look at what the terrain is that you're living in. And now let's make a very sober determination about what do you want to do.
Yep.
You want to navigate this broken mess the way it is. You want to utilize your knowledge about how the system, what it really values, and sort of, become successful in this thing, finagling the culture the way it is? Or do you want to put up a protest vote? Or do you want to jet? And so we've had those kind of conversations, man. And I'll tell you, so when you don't do this well, and if you don't want to hear our perspective about it, you and I can be silent too, can't we, Tommy?
Yeah, sure can.
We can quiet up and do the work that we try to do and make the change that we're trying to make. We don't have to keep reminding you that this could bite you. We don't have to say that every day. The reality is that it can, and it will.
And it will.
And that's what I've seen, Tommy. I mean, people writing letters to the board with lots of signatories because you can silence their voices for a minute. But the times that we're living in, Tommy, that's just not a good choice. What we're seeing is that inequality is one of the 6 global megatrends. So it's a big issue around the world, inequity. And so you're not going to avoid it coming back around to you. And so I'm seeing that. And Tommy, also, I'm seeing organizations that want to say things. They want to sort of start branding what they're doing around inclusion, and before they get that real work done.
Yeah.
What's the problem with that, Tommy?
So a couple of things come to mind. First is that it is literally the mindset that equality is a widget.
Mm.
When a company simply installs the widget of equality, then everyone else will just start working the system using the widget.
Right.
And you just, here's the widget of equality. Here it is. We're going to brand it, right? We have this new widget. Take it, buy it, purchase it, use it. So that's not even half the battle. That may be a quarter of the battle.
Right. Another
quarter of the battle is, now that I have this widget, so-called widget, how do I use it?
Right. And
right?
Why? Why do I even use it?
And why? And then another quarter, Eric, just like any widget or any machine, they break down.
Okay.
So when that diversity, equity, and inclusion widget breaks down by way of, the people who've used it over and over and over again, and it starts to break down, we have to build it back up again. People do not know how to reinvent and or fix it. In other words, if we date back to 50 years ago, folks were saying in organizations, we may want to include women into our workforce, right? And that's we have some caution, but we're going to bring the women out of the kitchen and the bedroom. Those were the biases that men had about women.
Mm-hmm.
So women came in and showed that they can be, kind of domestic engineers as well as civil engineers and aeronautical engineers, all that good stuff. Fast forward, that widget of the woman as the diversity effort or the diversity widget, it's weathered its time. And other aspects like race, gender identity, socioeconomic status, even generational, how I look at work and play, that came into mind. And people said, we don't know how to fix this. Because 50 years ago, we're still working on this woman thing. We thought that was cared for. We thought that the diversity stuff was over.
Right.
We don't know how to fix this.
Right.
So we have a widget that we've used in the past, but now we have a new machine that we're trying to use the same old broken widget to fix.
Right.
Even today, Eric, automobiles have changed. And if what I just said, if it didn't make sense, just look at your cars today. The mechanics who fix cars today, they've had to get additional training to fix the cars that we have today. There's much more technology today than in the deuce and a quarter.
Right.
Back in 1955.
Right.
When I was in a car accident, a little fender bender, where I bumped up against the tailgate of a truck. Eric, the little tailgate went through my Toyota. I have a luxury Toyota car. It went through the sensor, pushed the sensor in, pushed the radiator in, and pushed into the flywheel. $8,500 worth of damage.
Right.
And it was the space of about 4 inches. $8,500. I said, why does it cost this much?
Right.
It was like, these aren't like the cars in the past. It went through that sensor. That sensor is $2,500. Right? That's how diversity is now, where people are like, I have a widget, give them the widget, and we're diverse.
Right.
But no, people say, we want to drive in a new direction. Altogether.
I don't want you to do that. That's not what we hired you for.
Yep.
And so what we're seeing, Tommy, I was looking at a study that was done by Glassdoor, and they looked at 900 and something Fortune 500 companies in terms of pay equity. And out of those 970 something, 72 agreed to engage in efforts to ensure pay equity. And then that's less than 10%. And then only 16 of those agreed to publish or make transparent their results. So, Tommy, here's where we are, that people are struggling. So we want to make an assumption that an organization is fair and equitable to all people. And we sort of feel like common sense says, why would we try to cheat people or hold people back or do people wrong? Why would we? That doesn't make any sense. But nobody really wants to take and study that. Nobody wants to really analyze that. I've even told, so I try to make it really simple for companies. So one of the things that I do, I've added another diversity item. I said to some people this week, I said, well, let me give you another discrimination example. I said, in mergers and acquisitions, I said, let's say my company buys yours. Here's what I say. In conversation number one, I say, hey, we're so happy to be bringing you on as part of the team. We see this as being a real partnership, and we don't see ourselves as really, we're not going to make many changes in you because you guys are amazing. And we look forward to learning from you. That's what we say in conversation one. In conversation three, look, we won, you lost. Here's how we do things. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So I say to people all the time that discrimination is actually the same. Whether you're talking about gender discrimination, race, sexual orientation, position, location, or merger or shift, it's all the same. In groups, out groups, power groups, unempowered groups, and people are not willing enough to share power and to take advantage of the full array of talent, skills, and abilities that come from people who are less powered. Now, that's crazy, though, Tommy.
Yep.
How can we help people really fundamentally get past that and really see that this is going to bite you? It's killing you two ways. Discrimination puts you at risk of being exposed later, but today it harms you in terms of you not being able to get the best insights. But, Tommy, I'm going to suggest that there's something at play that's more powerful than being having your greatest success as an organization, as an institution, as a community. It's people's self-interest and our desires, our personal desires to hold on to power.
Yep.
And I think that's fundamentally, man. Man, Ken is showing up saying all kind of crazy stuff already, man. But I think that's what organizations are all too often looking for is people to collude with them to say that we're okay. And that's just helpful.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I know you're spot on, Eric. I had an opportunity within the last 2 weeks in doing this diversity, equity, and inclusion work to speak to a senior vice president of a multi-billion-dollar organization. And we were going around the organization, even with the CEO, as well as a few board trustees, let alone the senior leadership team and management team. But this senior vice president, pretty much number 4, number 5 person in the organization, and sitting with the individual, he asked a simple question that was loaded. Eric, he asked me, what is the difference between equity and equality besides the length of the word? And when he said it, I said, come again? He said, yeah, what's the difference between equity and equality besides the length of the word?
Yellow lights start flashing. Warning, warning, warning.
So in my pause, I gave him a long pause in the conversation, like 15 seconds, to allow him to hear his own thinking, right? And to allow me to process the thinking. What I heard was, I don't pay attention to these terms of equity, equality, inclusion, diversity. Those are not on my radar of things that I prioritize.
Mm.
And so I'm going to minimize these terms, ideals, concepts into a simple ask a question such as, what is the difference other than the length of the word? And so when people ask, what is the difference between being Black or African American, right? Or what is the difference between the L and the G and the T and the B and the I and the A and the plus? What is the difference between the working class and the middle class?
Mm.
What is the difference between, and this is something I know very little about, being a conservative and being a moderate?
Right.
Right. To this day, I don't even know the difference.
Right.
Right. And people talk about it all the time as part of their personal identity.
Right.
I do not know the difference. And one reason, full transparency, Eric, is that I find myself in the mindset just like that senior vice president who asked me, what's the difference between equity and equality besides the length? I asked the same question. What's the difference between being a moderate and being a conservative other than they're both American? Right. And then people that know the difference or assume they know the difference will say, well, take out the we're both American. Let's look at our tribal sections, our groups, moderate and conservative. I'm like, which direction are they going? Are we going in the same direction of being American? That's what we're trying to do in organizations, Eric.
Right.
We're trying to take a look at employees and ask, are we going in the same direction toward profit, toward equality, toward bringing all of our employees and maximizing their potential to bring better service and products to our customers?
Right.
That's where we're going. But we have senior vice presidents who are saying, hey, if Tommy is not on board, fire him.
Right.
Right.
So
I don't see any equality or equity.
right.
Yep.
So let me weigh in, and I'm going to say something here, Tommy, that speak to this a little bit. And I hope Ken Wilson's out there taking notes. Get the notepad out right now.
Yeah, that guy.
Making jokes while Tommy and I waxing eloquent and being deep and everything. I'm about to give you something right now. I hope you tuned in and haven't walked away, because you know sometimes Ken will walk away.
He'll walk away.
He'll throw a joke up and walk away. But Tommy, we developed something called the impact to urgency model. And so what I did is I drew a series of circles on a PowerPoint. And I started with the biggest circle being for C-suite leaders within organizations. And what the model basically says, the long and short of it is, the more power you have in an organization, the least amount of personal experience you have with inequity. So you have the greatest amount of organizational power, but the least amount of personal experience with inequity, so there's no real urgency to deal with it. Then you go down from C-suite to HR leaders who have a little less power organizationally, a little more understanding of inequity because they hear from some of their people. Then you move down to I&D leaders who have less power than HR leaders. They have more perspective about inequity because they've chosen to work in this area. And then you go all the way down to diverse employees' views. And you have the people with the least amount of organizational power with the greatest amount of experience with inequity. And so that's what we run up against, Tommy, is that when these issues do not impact you, there is very little urgency to deal with them. That's where we are. And so organizations are basically saying that if my days are going well, then we're doing enough. I mean, why are y'all complaining? And so we do that on so many different fronts, man. I don't care if it's locational. I don't care, because if the corporate headquarters is in the U.S., but you working in India, you're going to get the same kind of stuff that Black folks get. That's going to get the same kind of stuff that gay people get, you know. And so I don't know why people can't fundamentally understand that if you don't address these issues, Tommy, they are not going away, are they?
No, no, they're not. But Eric, let me follow up with you. That last question that you asked very quickly, like you, I like to slow it down for just a second. You said that you can't understand why.
Mm,
I know that you do it in your heart of hearts, your mind of minds, and we all do.
right.
One of the reasons why I think why folks don't pay attention is that they don't want to and they don't have to.
Mm,
Period. Right? Ask any person that drives a car every day to and from work, to and from place of worship, to and from the grocery store, right? Get in the car, turn it on. If it's parked outside, let it run a little bit to warm up. If it's parked in the garage, get in, open up the garage, out you go. Every single day, Eric. And ask them, have you thought about putting air in your bicycle tire? And they will say, what bicycle?
right.
I haven't even thought about a bicycle, let alone having to put air in the bicycle tire. I deal with automobiles, right? But what about the people who ride bikes? What about them? In fact, I don't even like the bicycle lanes because it takes away space from my car, right?
Right.
So if we're trying to give equity, it takes away space from me and mine.
Mm,
I don't think about things I don't think about, and I choose not to think about things that make me uncomfortable
mm,
because, quote unquote, life or work is tough enough. I want to take the easy way, right? And sometimes that easy way is to push other people down.
mm.
So, from my mindset, from my energy, from my leadership style, right, my approach, my communication, I, I demean other people. I push them down. I ostracize them. I nullify them. I negate them. It is to make my world more comfortable. I
Mm,
feel better. I do better. I am better.
mm.
And then the proverbial landmine blows up and there's an event in the business, such as a racial event or discriminatory event, or in society, there's an event like we've had in 2020.
Right.
That now I got to pay attention.
Right.
Now,
Right.
I'm only paying attention until I no longer have to pay attention. Because
Mm,
in 2021, Eric, there's going to be fewer and fewer companies who are going to really, truly be paying attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why? Because that box was checked in 2020, i.e., discrimination in society, i.e.,
right.
COVID, global pandemic,
Right.
i.e., some of these other movements. I've checked that box. I'm
Right.
now wanting to go back to my comfort zone. Later for you, minority and underrepresented people,
Right.
stay forward. That's
Right.
what's going to happen.
So now we're about to move the ball forward. We're about to pass the ball, move it forward for y'all. Because see, if you're listening to Tommy Lewis and myself right now, and you're a person of color, historically disadvantaged member of whatever group, you might begin to feel comfortable right now, as though this problem is not one that you have anything to do with. This is all about those in power, that other man. Well, I'm going to ask that question because, Tommy, I'm not sure if there's any difference whatsoever between how people will operate when given the same opportunities, freedoms, and powers.
Come on
We
now.
got to let y'all off the hook. Y'all can't get up here on Saturday morning and think you can sleepwalk through this conversation. Not going to happen. I'll say to you that it's easy for people to blame professional athletes when they come into all that money. Now they've changed. That's easy. It's easy to look at Oprah Winfrey, criticize her. Tyler Perry, criticize him, say they got all that money and yet they're not. Okay. What happened when you get your turn? I'm going to suggest to you that you're going to change as well, and that the nature of mankind is not very different across people. Now, let's look at this on a practical level. I want to bring this right down to the Joe Biden, President-elect Joe Biden. Doing a great job right now. Really nice, even keel, trying to keep the country together, trying to talk about unity and really believing America can come back together. I love what he's saying, love what he's doing. His first major pick was his vice president, Kamala Harris. So we feel good, people of color. He went out there and did what he needed to do. He wasn't just talking about the value of women. He's got the first woman vice president now. Great job, Joe. But he's put out now a few of his cabinet picks. And groups sit over in the corner with what, Tommy? They sit over the corner with a clicker. Yeah. How many of us he got? Click. One. What else he got? You know, so that's what we're doing. We're sitting over the corner. Click. And so they came at him. So the NAACP said, hey, Clyburn said, hey, black folks really were responsible. Where are we at? And we need more in your cabinet. And so I saw him responding to that. The progressives are coming after him. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, coming after him. And I love his response, man. Love this. This is what happens when you get a professional communication department and team working with you. He said, look, those people are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. He said they are literally fighting for their constituents. They're aggressively standing up for and championing for their constituents. He said that's exactly what they're supposed to do. He said, my job is to take all of that in. He said, and then to somehow balance this so that at the end, you should be able to look at the body of work that I've finally done. At the end, you should be able to look at my cabinet and it should look like America. He says, and I anticipate that I'm going to have the most diverse cabinet sort of in the history of this country. Now, but my question to you is this, Tommy. Great answer, Joe Biden. But are any of us truly interested in diversity? Or are we mainly using that language in order to focus on our own self-interest? And if that's the case, why the hell we complaining about the hosing you getting from other folk?
Yeah. That is profound, Eric. I would love to hear our community respond to that as well.
Absolutely.
I would love to hear that. Absolutely,
man.
Because what I've heard, what I've learned in this work, and I love how you framed up the question, right? We're talking about how Biden has, selected his cabinet, the pushback from others regarding their constituents and the response, et cetera. And then around this question around diversity and then individuals changing. Eric, I simply have learned that the arduous struggle and pathway to the top becomes both personal, very selfish. I need to be at the top such that I am a decision maker and I have power. And then there are allies that championing our cause. They don't get to the top, but they assist us to get to that top, right? And when we get to the top, one of the first groups of people that we turn to is the immediate small group of people who've helped us get there, not the entire people. When we get to the top, it is the talented 10th. It's only the 10% of the 100%. Hey, thank you, Eric. Thank you, T out in California. Thank you, Ken. Right. Thank you, Reginald, Candace. Right. Thank you.
Right.
Tamara, thank you. So I named off about 8 people.
Right.
That's pretty much all the people I need to be thanking and thinking about. Not just thanking, but thinking about. What about the other people? No, we've arrived. So especially people of color, we get to this place where we believe we've arrived.
Mm.
And we may have true power or a false sense of power.
Mm-hmm.
If we think we have true power and we try to move an initiative forward and we see the pushback, the
Right.
venomous pushback, oh my goodness,
Right.
I may not have the power,
Right.
right? We all need to listen and read the books that Barack Obama is publishing now, talking about how politics works.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about it in his books. He was at the top and he was like, oh, I don't have the power.
Mm.
But you're the president. No,
Right.
that's not the way power works.
Mm.
Right? Now, the other side is that if it's a false sense of power, a false sense, what I don't want to do is threaten my false image. In other words, Eric, if I get to a certain place in my business
Mm.
and I know
Come
we
on.
need diversity, equity, inclusion, I by no means am going to be the person that speaks up to say we need diversity, equity, and inclusion because my false sense of power will tell me if you speak up, you will be silenced. The people who allowed you to be in your role, allowing by promoting you, by championing you, by sponsoring you, they will turn and bite you in a heartbeat. You will be demoted, or even worse, you will be left out to dry. I know people who have been excommunicated from their roles, especially in government or quasi government, who have had trouble finding a similar job in 3 or 5 years because the same people who helped them get there said, nah, you shouldn't have said that, bruh. Right? How dare you speak up about this diversity? We got you there. You're the checkpoint. You're the 10%. Eric, folks are up there like, I'm here. I leveraged the diversity piece. Now I'm here. I'm the diversity. Literally, I'm the diversity quote.
Right. And shut the door.
And shut the door.
Lock the rest of them out. And so I'm going to tell you, so let me go just a little bit further with this, Tommy. I was listening with my son, Ethan, to one of these new platforms, and they were looking at some apps that have been newly created, that a white guy created the app, but its main audience is Black people. So he's opened himself up to come onto one of these, platforms and talk to Black folks. And so the people that were hosting the event were twisting his arm because he's going to be able to create some bigger opportunities for folks. So Tommy, the host, they were the representatives of you and I, people of color. And they wanted to strong arm him into a thing where they were going to bring him to a town hall type meeting where they could strong arm him into a deal for them. Not for you and I, for them. And so that just is crazy, Tommy, that people can use our image and in our name, they can fill their coffers up. Is that right, Tommy? Is that any different than the stuff that folks that are in power are already doing? What makes that different?
Well, it is cultural appropriation. So those who are outside of said culture may be exploiting the resources, benefits, and kind of institutional or cultural wealth that is provided by said culture. If I am outside of that culture and I have created the idea to make money, to increase my business, to bring additional value through the other culture, some people say that's fine. Let me give you an example, Eric, and you gave an example. So here's a similar, if not counter example. Let's take the music industry. And we can go back to Motown. Remember Motown, right? And Berry Gordy had created a business model with regards to his talent and the music, kind of the flow, the feel of the music. It was the Motown what?
Motown.
Sound.
Yeah.
Motown sound. It was the sound. That sound was coming from an energy. It was coming from a culture, not just Detroit, not just America, but it was also an African, a homeland culture. And Berry Gordy said, we're not just black music, we're music. And so he hired non-black people to promote the music, right? And to expand it. So what he did, he exploited white people, Jewish people, Irish people, German people to sell the Motown sound to Jewish people, white people, Irish people, German people, right? And basically culturally appropriated their connections and network to expand the business of Motown sound.
Right.
White people have historically done this with people of color and underrepresented people.
Right.
It could be from fashion to music,
Mm.
even to or institutions like redlining,
Mm-hmm.
right? And here it is, redlining. And I'm not going to get too deep into redlining, but basically it was this discrimination around home ownership and selling and buying of property, devaluing property, which
Right.
a lot of white people in power were devaluing the property of blacks and people of color in their communities, and then would turn around and develop property that was undervalued, that they undervalued. That acre of land is $1. Over here in this affluent community, that same acre of land is $100. So we're going to build a property, a building, a business in the dilapidated, undervalued community, pushing the people out and say, you know what, we'll have a couple of black shops there. We'll have a couple of black restaurants.
Right.
So the 10 black people that are staying in the community, please come to eat at the restaurant, but you can't get into the stadium, right? Because we changed your community.
Mm.
For those in Cincinnati, that sounds familiar. I'm from Cincinnati. My parents are from Cincinnati. Grandparents are from different parts of the country. But we had a community called the West End.
Yeah. Ran a highway right through it.
Ran a highway right through it, devalued the property, now developing the property, now putting other property and facilities and things in that nature. And now in 2020, there's an entire generation of blacks, people of color, and whites who do not know the historical biography of the West End. It is so different, not necessarily always positive. Some of it is positive, but to the point is culturally unidentifiable.
Mm.
So when white folks are culturally inappropriating black folks or people of color, then sometimes that culture that's been usurped is culturally unidentifiable.
Right.
And that's what those folks that were pushing back on Joe Biden, that's what's happening really. It's they're culturally unidentifiable. They're saying, what about black folks?
Right.
All right, well, we'll give you the one. Great, we got our one. Do you serve black folks? No, we still need the Jewish money. We still need the Irish money. We still need the white money, because if we look at our wealth gap, the whites have disproportionately more wealth than we do. We still need that money to help our folks. So we don't really focus on our folks. We focus on the folks that have the money. We did get our one there.
Right.
That's why we have this conversation, Eric.
Right. Tommy, I tell you what, my mind ran away a little bit. I got sad and had to run back, but let me tell you the streets that I ran to. Because I'm still I'm trying to understand. So audience, stick with us. We're trying to understand What are the right choices? What are good choices versus bad choices? We oftentimes, when we talk about fairness and equity, we're talking about the higher ground and doing the right thing. So let's just get oriented in terms of what we're talking about. We're talking about fairness, equity, doing the right thing, not harming people, not systematically excluding and harming people. And so we're trying to look at why that happens. And is that something that only happens from the dominant culture, or is it something that all of us can be tempted toward? And so, Tommy, where my mind ran to was BET. So I first ran to BET and I said, BET was owned by Black folks at one point, and then we sold it to whites. I was just looking at BET the other day and I was thinking, man, I love all these shows. Man, this feels so. And then I said, man, white people own it now. And so the question is it wrong for whites to buy it? Is it wrong for blacks to sell it? What's right? We don't own anything now. And then I went further, Tommy, and I went back to blacks selling other blacks into slavery.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Come on now, Eric.
And yet, our greatest anger is that whites, for buying slaves, sustaining slavery for so long. I get it. I'm just challenging us to look at what is our role in these things and how different is the nature of man. And so what is it that all of us have to be striving for that goes beyond selfish self-interest? I don't even know what to do with that, Tommy. But it's the kind of thinking that you and I are free to explore. Because as we begin to explore it, we begin to understand the complexity of the conversation. We begin to recognize that we're not just victims in this whole thing.
Yeah. No, we're not just victims. And I'm glad you brought it up, Eric, about slavery. And beginning with the enslavement of Africans on the continent.
That's your lane.
That's my lane. Before coming over to this new world, right? And creating an economy as well as a civilization in this new world. It began, I believe, with tribalism and the war against tribes. So I'm not saying that tribalism is bad, right? We all have our identities.
Right.
But the warring against other tribes for self-preservation and self-interest.
Right.
I think you're spot on. So at the end of the day, I will sell out my neighbor to gain advantage for me and mine. Short-term thinking, where those who I sold out to end up coming back and taking me. They took my neighbor, they took my other neighbor, they took my other neighbor, and I was offering all up. You're not going to take me, we'll take you too.
You got nobody.
Got nobody. So when we are at work and we are spreading that little gossip, as we will define it, little gossip, it is part of the bigger picture of gossip. So folks that, in companies, gossip will burn departments down. It will burn the employee morale down. It would literally burn the productivity and efficiency down. That's gossip. It's their lies and half truths that continue to spread like cancer. And they get so large that people don't even know what the truth is. And so the victims who are like, I'm being victimized by discrimination or, inequity. I'm being victimized. So-and-so is doing this. What? Time out. You're starting and continuing to spread that venom and discriminating against people. Right? You're spreading something that you may or may not know is the truth. where we are now, Eric, as we have begun this year 2020, talking about the year reinvention. We're talking about the energy that was created by the last administration. We're brokering into a new administration. We're still kind of following through with the global pandemic. Now we're coming into 2021 with some exhaustion.
Uh-huh.
We're tired of a lot.
Yep.
We're coming into 2021, Eric, with humility around what we thought we knew, and we really don't.
Love it. Yes,
Eric,
sir.
in closing, I don't think that we being all of us, are as smart as we think we are. If we were, Eric, we would solve these issues that have been around, some of them hundreds of years, the psychological impact of slavery into Jim Crow and all that good stuff, into discrimination and inequity. We would have solved the mindsets of rebuttal, where people just choose and select, I'm not going to agree on that. I'm not going to wear a mask. I don't think that this pandemic is real. I think they're against us. I've never experienced them, but I think they're against us. That's just a mindset. We're still battling the way people think.
That's it, Tommy Lewis. And I'll tell you, so here's the answer. You all might be under the assumption that Tommy Lewis and I don't have answers, just questions, but we do.
Yes,
the answer is this. Number one, to understand that race is the child of racism. Say it again. Race is the child of racism. We are no different from one another, period, biologically. All the same. Racism divided us because it was in the interest of the lighter race. Now, how does that relate to my answer? My answer is this, is that at the end of the day, you've got to find inside yourself love for everybody. That doesn't mean that you can't on occasion champion and fight for disenfranchised, cut off people. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But in your doing of that work, maintain room in your heart to love all people, including the oppressors. Now, that's a mouthful right there, Tommy.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we have any other choice. Because the nature of man has all kind of evil in it. And we can find evil people down the annals of history of all kinds. And so I think that my faith says, love the Lord thy God. And then it says, love others. And so that is what is at the heart of a lot of what you and I are doing within organizations, is we're fundamentally trying to teach people how to care about each other and basically how to love each other. And anytime you get away from that, I think that you are subject to be a big part of the problem. And I think that as people's biggest fear is when you are empowered that you won't love me. That's people's biggest fear. And so we spend a lot of effort then trying to keep each other down.
So let me ask you this, Eric. And you've talked about this in shows before, maybe not this year, but in many years. We've been on the show for 2.5, almost 3 years. And there's been times when you've shared with the audience that, if they're in an organization and their organizations have a need for diversity, equity, and inclusion, that there are 2 organizations among many, but 2 organizations who are right here to provide solution, the water to the fire, right?
Yep.
And so as we look at our community and we know that there's the listening community, those who are going to watch this video after it's live streamed, who are working independently within their own companies and businesses and organizations, communities. My question is, if there is a need for diversity, equity, and inclusion, why do people of color in particular not promote another business of color to provide the solution to the need in their organization?
Right.
Why? I work for the company. I know there's a need. Next thing you know, we get diversity training, and it's from this other company. I'm like, where did they get them from? And I know of 2 or a half a dozen organizations that I did not offer up to the company. Why do we do that?
It's a good question, Tommy, and I'll tell you why. Part of it is familiarity. So familiarity breeds content, but it also breeds a lack of awareness of who's around us. We don't fully know one another, and I'm not even going to put that off on others not knowing me. I don't know a lot of people as well, and there have been people that I've known for 20 years and I don't know. Yeah. But I'd also say, Tommy, that one of the things that I'm reminded of the consultants during slavery that said that stop beating your slaves. I'm going to give you some training around how to keep your slaves under control. You teach them to distrust one another. Mm-hmm. And so if you do that, you get them talking and telling on each other, then you'll always be able to control them. I think that we, like other folks, man, we're broken, we're envious, we're unaware. And so we don't operate very differently than others. And I'll tell you this, Tom, to be honest with you, here's part of the challenge. People, and I did a slide of this, that oftentimes we are so focused on our own life and trying to survive, we haven't even considered anybody else. When the company finally got around to diversity, they already got it done. I didn't even know, because I wasn't even thinking about it. I was thinking about my pain. I was thinking about my job. I was thinking about my kids. I was thinking about COVID-19. And I didn't even think about y'all at all. It ain't personal. It's just that. Yeah. And I'll tell you, so right now, today, Tommy, it seems like time flies and that we don't have time for anybody else. That's the world that we're living in right now. When I grew up, it felt like the days were slower. And that you played ball and you played ball until the night lights came on and you went down the street, you rode your bike up down the street, up the street in Skyline Acres, rode it over to Neptune and, Mercury and all them streets, man. And you went down, you played football, you got dirty, you came home, the lights wasn't, the night lights weren't on just yet. And then finally you came in dirty, stinky, smelly, but that was a long day. We don't have that no more. These days are doing like this, Tommy. And people are just mired in survival mode, man. And don't on my street, we don't have sidewalks, man. That just means don't come over my house for nothing. Don't come over with no sugar, eggs, nothing. Don't want to see you. And I've been living there. We built our house probably 26 years ago. I've been in my neighbor's house a total of 3 times. In the doorway here, and dinner here once. Mm-hmm. In all those years. And so we just don't know each other. And even in communities of color, man, I mean, now people are even afraid to come out, man. Folks getting shot and everything, man. Shoot. So that's where we are, Tommy. We're in a world of isolation. Everybody's focused on themselves and their own survival. And we don't realize, Tommy, that we can't get there that way. We can't get there. Well, the equality, the equity that we're looking for, we cannot achieve by ourselves. The only way to get there is with others and through others. And that's what you and I have learned from our 3 years together, is that we're stronger together, that God has given us great value together. Every time we talk to each other, we are inspired, and that adds life to us. It adds life. It adds wisdom. It adds insight. It adds encouragement. It makes our lives better. And we're not convinced of that, just like companies aren't. So it's easy to blame the company for not seeing what we think is obvious, but we don't see it ourselves in ourselves. And that's why we are perpetually waiting. Well, just let that hit the atmosphere for a minute, Tommy. We're waiting for somebody to come along and save us. Why are we continuing to wait? At what point are we going to say that paradigm, that dog won't hunt? That paradigm's not working for us. And Tommy, as we begin to invest in one another and invest in collaborative thinking and inclusion within our own community, we will find strength that we've never seen. We'll find solutions that don't exist today. Yeah. And I think that, Tommy, I hope people can hear us, because I think out of everything that we talked about, I think that is it, man. It's the way that we did it in years gone by. It's the way forward now. And I would say, Black people especially, go beyond thinking simply about other Black people.
Yeah.
You've got to think about the community of helpers. In other words, my family is anybody that is willing to, interested in working with me to make our lives collectively better. That's my people right there. That's who my people are. And I think that that's what we got to get to. We want to spend another minute. Any reaction that you have to that, Tommy, before we move into Google? But I want to sort of land maybe with Google. But you and I have said some things today that we hadn't prepared in terms of our responses. We've learned some things. We've gotten some fresh manna, some conversations that I don't know if I've heard us people even have.
Yep.
That put us in the same lane as the quote unquote oppressors.
Yeah. I'll let it rest there. I think that was on point, man. Your last comments, got me thinking. I'm inspired. I hope that our community is. And, it's around some self-reflection. I'm self-reflecting right now. And looking at 2021 is going to be different intentionally, and not just because it's a new year, a new month, a new day, but intentionally to get a different outcome and not to repeat the past.
Right.
That's what I'm taking from what you just shared.
Right.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
Let's look at Google. So the story this week in Google is that they fired Dr. Timnit Gebru. And she was an AI, artificial intelligence expert. She was an ethics leader, a prominent researcher known for expertise in bias in AI facial recognition, and really trying to help Google really embrace being an inclusive organization. Google has won numerous awards for their commitment to inclusion and diversity. They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars invested in inclusion and diversity. And yet, when Dr. Gebru wrote a letter to brains and Black women, women of color and allies, she wrote a letter encouraging them to sort of not just keep going along with this broken system that's not going to do the right thing. And that when you push back, that puts you on the out. So be careful, because doing this work around champion and standing up could cost you. And they then fired her. And I'll tell you, Tommy, there's a lot of backlash that's now going around, the tech industry, because she was not some small person. She was really seen as a global leader in this space. With Google, investing so heavily in inclusion and diversity and beginning to set the standards around that, for them to fire her without even having a conversation. Tommy, what does that say about the nature of corporate expectation when they begin to even work in this space? Man, how much further are we away from progress as a result of that? Or is that just an anomaly? Is this an outlier, or in your from your perspective, is that more commonplace?
No, it's not an outlier, Eric, at all. It is an oxymoron, however. And what I mean by that is uh, companies and people in companies who have power, they exercise their power typically when it negatively impacts others.
Mm.
That's what typically happens. For example, if Dr. Gabru says, I believe that I'm being devalued, dehumanized in the organization, I'm not being seen, another person in power can say, you're fired. If Dr. Gabru says, I see great potential here at this company, I look to stay here, I actually look to be promoted to maybe CEO. Person in power may say, okay, but nothing happens.
Right.
In other words, an employee can speak critically against the organization, and another person or group of people can negatively impact them. But if the same person says, I want to be CEO, that doesn't mean nothing. We don't immediately promote you.
No.
We can immediately fire you, right? So that means, where does the true power rest? We can immediately negatively impact your life and career,
Right.
but we can stall, dismiss, not even hear or ignore your request for advancement.
Right.
Right. That is the corporate pyramid of power.
Right.
Not Maslow's pyramid. It's the corporate pyramid of power. Is that
Right.
those at the top of the pyramid, right, are always evaluating their threats of people below them.
Right.
Always.
Right.
There's always some insecurity and fear.
Right. Let me throw this at you, Tommy. I just thought about it. So one of the things that Donald Trump was known for is impulsive decisions, right?
Yep.
Impulsive decisions that oftentimes were irresponsible and thoughtless. The name of the boss of Dr. Gabru that fired her, I think, was Jeff Dean. Let me ask you this, Tommy. What kind of price tag might you put on that decision that he made? How much that? Yeah, right. Come on, Tommy. Come on, Tommy. How irresponsible is that for you to make a $200 to $300 million decision on an impulse? You didn't silence her. You put her on steroids. You put her message on steroids. How big is the cost going to be against Google?
Oh, Eric, that is a good question.
But everybody can look at Donald Trump and criticize him for being impulsive and making crazy, dumb decisions. But what was that?
I think it's the same. I think it's the same. It's equivalent. If a Donald Trump can say, we're going to take these troops out of this region, right? I want to put a feather in my hat saying I ended the war. So we're going to move from 2,800 troops down to 500, right? Do it, Mr. President. I said do it. So they do it.
Right.
10 years from now, there may be a terrorist attack again on the United States. Terribly unfortunate, right? Because there's always that threat there that had been silenced, but always there.
Right.
The movement.
Right.
That same decision. How dare you talk about we've dehumanized you? You're fired. And I'm going to fire you over electronic platform. It's not Twitter. It's just an internal email to you and HR and the CEO. You're fired. So you're going to, we lost, I don't know, $250,000, maybe $300,000 salary. But the truth of the matter is that the movement is still there, and they may have very well just begun the beginning of the end of something.
Tommy, I got to throw this in there. How much more did they have to pay you to work with Google? And they would balk at it if you really load it up. Let's say just you load it up like a real heavy model of Make It Plain consultant with all the bells and whistles.
Yep.
To really get healthy. How much money let's go high end.
Yep. For us to help Google in this event long term, and looking at the size of Google,
right?
Looking at the intricacies of the employees based on its size,
right?
Eric, I can honestly say about $1 million a month.
Okay, but that's nothing, is it?
That's
it's
nothing
compared to what they about.
It will be $12 million a year,
right,
to listen to them,
right.
And after that year, pulling all that data from listening and gathering, both anecdotal data and quantitative data, all those metrics and measurements they have. I'm just gathering the data. $12 million.
Right.
It will probably be a percentage of their annual loss.
Right. A small percentage of what he just drop kicked off the cliff.
Drop kicked off the cliff.
Off impulse.
Yep. Boom. $200-300 million gone. It's a wash. Right? Why? Because I was angry, and that amygdala trigger. How dare she? It's layered with bias and discrimination
and foolishness.
And foolishness.
And yet people will sit around and say your price tag is too high. To help me understand my broken ways. And basically, let's just look at what you're doing, brother man.
Yeah.
Really what you're doing is you're coming in with the COVID-19 vaccine. You're coming in with the cure. And when you get through studying me, if I really let you study me thoroughly, you're not just going to come back to me telling me what I'm doing wrong with people of different races. You're going to have the whole story. You're going to also understand how innovation gets stuck. You're going to show me where the log jams are, where innovation can't break through, because we got certain leaders that have cut off certain people from India and other places that we can't even hear them no more. Or we bought that superstar company and now they can't, not a new ideas come out of them since we bought them. You'll understand the log jam there that has caused us to not be able to get the goods out. So let's see, is that a cost, Tommy, or is that an investment?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You ain't getting nothing out of this drop kick that you just did. You're not getting nothing out of that but more pain.
More pain and sustained pain.
Hold up. What? Sustained pain? Say more about that. That's pain.
So with sustained pain, the symptom may be the cough, maybe the runny nose, and maybe the loss of smell or loss of taste.
Right.
But sustained is when there are 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we identified that we had some pre-existing conditions that came from an exposure to the pain 20 years ago.
Right.
So today, with the firing of the AI thought leader,
right, that's right,
who's a female,
you did it,
person of color, right? Yep. 20 years from now, when we being this organization, when we're looking to hire
preach, brother,
women or people of color at that level of competence, at that level of experience, at that level of skill,
Mm.
right? The salary may not be 300,000. It may be 2 million.
Mm.
It is the same phenomenon happening in professional athletics.
Right.
Eric,
Right.
that the pro athlete today playing fundamentally the same sport are reaping the financial benefits of the owners of that same sport 40 and 50 years ago.
Right.
Right? So I want to bring this home here for the analogy.
Right.
And I know professional athletes, those who played in the league, whatever league, for periods of time, and
Right.
they're in their 60s, late 50s, and 60s. Football players played in the NFL.
Right.
Right? And I golf with them all the time and all that good stuff. Hey, wouldn't you want to play football now for the salary? No, I played when I should have played.
Right.
I've heard
Right.
professional football players say I played
That
when I
was
should have
somebody
played.
that did that. Right.
Yep. And so what does that mean? That means that the trials and tribulations that I experienced then at the low wages that I received, it could have been $1 million or a few hundred thousands of dollars. I would not want to trade that in for any amount of money to endure what I would have to endure as a professional athlete today.
Wow. Wow.
So the person that fired the AI specialist today, the business of this organization
Right.
will have to pay out 100-fold in 20 years, 30 years for people to say, I remember what you did.
It's
Right?
happening right now, Tommy.
That's it. That's it.
Right now.
The rap artist Jay-Z. Jay-Z talks about he's fleecing record companies today for what they did to Cold Crush back in the 70s when they didn't pay the group. He said, wait a minute, you didn't pay rap music artists then, so you got to pay me 100 times as much. Wait a minute, Jay, I don't think you're worth it. Then I'm not going to do business with you. I'm not going to join you.
Right.
Google may have folks that say, I'll go to a competitor.
That's exactly
rather
right.
than go to an organization and then join an organization and then speak my truth when someone says, what do you think? And I could get terminated just
Right.
like you terminated Dr. So-and-so, who is the thought leader in AI in this space. That's what it's saying.
So you just supercharged her brand. And you literally have sealed your fate with current candidates and those that were on the docket. So right now, this whole class of recruits that are sitting around because we're in a pandemic and they're looking at everything on social media platforms are now seeing the action that you took against an innocent party who is brilliant, seen as a genius in many ways, who is fighting for justice. So all that money you spent on ads, all these stories you telling me about how you vowed, all those beautiful award-winning commercials that you did, all of that has been flushed a bit down the toilet because there are people right now today, Tommy, right now today, there are women, people of color, and white guys that are allies and of color that are considering whether they're going to stay there. They're right now at home, sitting, thinking, right now, am I out of here? There were some that were thinking about a new business. There were some that have insight and information about what Google's doing that's illegal or not in our best interest as a society, who believe that because Timnet was there, that they had somebody that was watching it and had the ability to help Google maybe pivot back to the right moral standing that will now make a different decision to get up out of there or to expose you as a result of how you did this viewed as honorable internal D&I leader.
This is incredible, Eric, because I had not thought about this prior to our show today. And it's the more or less the ripple effects for the pebble in the pond. Right?
Love
That this may so really, as I'm thinking about it, from an impact perspective, this may not only impact Google.
right. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
So yeah.
So it puts them all under fire with an administration that is coming in that's more sensitive to these kind of things. And every benefit of the doubt that Google is looking to receive now falls under question because you had an ethical person that was challenging you to do the right thing. And instead of you finding a way to negotiate that, you chose to use your immediate power to eliminate the threat or the voice, to silence the voice. So if you're able to do that, then people have to say, you're able to do anything. And so you have less allies. And now on the whole internet, that whole social media thing goes viral. And this generation loves the boycott. I mean, you're right in the midst of all boycotts. I mean, what did they think George Floyd was all about? And now here you have stuck your head up out the ground and said that we're not serious about this. And Tommy, the problem is you and I, just get your calculator out.
Yep.
Because they're going to put $1 billion. That decision, that's what I'm going to say. Mark my word. Everybody on social media, that's $1 billion decision that they just made.
Yep.
And then, Tommy, you might get a call for $200,000 to $300,000.
Yep.
Say, hey, Tommy, can you come help us $200,000 or $300,000? I can do something for that.
Mm-hmm.
But it will not be the help that you needed. But the help that you needed actually was a fraction, a tiny fraction of the cost that you just drop kicked. And I would say that's true in every organization we work with, Tommy.
I would say that too. I was about to echo what you just said, Eric. That is absolutely true. The investment is a small investment compared to other investments that may not yield any to very little results, such as marketing. I will tell you right now, marketing and advertising. There are millions upon millions of dollars spent in the marketing space, and the return on investment is below 5%, where with the 5%, these companies are able to have millions, if not billions of dollars of market profit with the 5%. And realistically, they're saying we would never get 80%. So we have a window of 20%. So every year in our marketing and advertising, we're trying to get 7% return, 8%. We have a strong 12%, unprecedented. With our work of awareness, of education, of strategy, of sustained implementation, right? That creates a positive, innovative, and creative culture that yields the increased advertising capture of 12%. Typically, that spend is absolutely less than a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
So
Right.
in other words, companies will spend, let's say, 1% on the work of DE&I, which contributes to possibly a 4 or 5% increase on marketing and advertising return on investment. Without that innovative thought, new people, new approaches, new understanding, they remain at the 5% return on the marketing advertising. It doesn't make sense from a business perspective.
Right.
In fact, what does make sense is I see those numbers, I hear those numbers. I don't trust everything around the process because I'm not going to say that our promotion went up because of DE&I. What I would say is Well, let's throw a little more investment in DE&I to see if we do get a higher return on the promotion, on the sales. And if we do, wait a minute, let's keep investing,
Right.
right? Eric, I'll close with this. Again, I've said it before, I say it again, the company is no longer in existence, but I worked for a multi-billion, multinational organization. And the expansion of said company came from our thinking that we can grow the business in other countries. We didn't know how.
Right.
We said there are other countries with other people where we should be in that space. We'll send our due diligence people over to said country for 6 months, gather the data, location, proximity, client potential, etc. They return with their prospectus
Mm-hmm.
to say, we've looked at this new and different market. We should invest in the infrastructure to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
Our return will be 25%. They said, can we negotiate with the government to see if we get any tax abatements? Right? Sure. Got $20 million worth of tax abatement, invested $100 million, and made $1 billion. That's the way the company grew.
Right.
My job as the chief diversity officer was saying, do you have anyone in that due diligence committee, that organization, that had any familiarity with the country already? That we can shorten that investigation from 6 months to 3 months and get our return faster. They said,
Right.
no, we don't. I said, that's my job. Let's get so-and-so, they're familiar, so-and-so. And now we're shrinking that time. You have to understand how business works, man. We have folks that may not understand that corporate, huge world and global perspective. And we may be thinking from that mom and pop perspective. And nothing wrong with that.
Love
I'm
it.
just saying how this impacted Google with this termination of one person is going to impact the industry
Right.
and the world.
And it's going to impact the industry starting now.
Yep.
And so we're going to ask our community to join in with us. Tommy, over the next couple of weeks, let's see if we can begin to get a better approximation of the cost.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to tell you this, Tommy. So Tommy Lewis and I want your help in trying to put together a better approximation of what this decision to fire Dr. Gabru is going to cost Google and the industry. What I would say, I'm going to use this term, haven't used it in a while since Jesse Jackson. And they used it oftentimes with Jesse Jackson from a negative standpoint. I'm going to use it actually from a positive standpoint. This is going to spur a shakedown of tech companies. Shakedown in a positive sense. Here's what you're going to see. I don't know why people don't check in with you and I and others, Tommy, to figure this out. But we just come off a global protest.
Yep.
We just come off of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and people say I ain't taking it no more. So here's the thing. All the years of the fake diversity inclusion initiatives is over. That was a period of time that you could do the fake initiative. Now, when you're putting up them fake statements and you're saying what you want to do and you're making global statements, we want to be fair, we're committed to stamping out racism. That's over. Nobody's buying that. People are now saying, don't show me your statement. Show me your board of directors. Show me your executive leaders. And I'm saying to you that what happened with Dr. Gabru at Google is going to begin to create a backlash in tech companies around. And some of them were trying to do legitimate DEI initiatives, and they were trying to get their sea legs under them. I'm going to say there's going to be less tolerance, less patience for that process, because people are seeing this as indicative of your rejection of pressure and accountability. That's what they're going to see it as, a rejection of pressure and accountability. And that if you have a different voice, we're going to use our power to silence you. And I think that the timing of this, Tommy, could also lead to legislation that begins to break down the monopoly that organizations like Google have.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you're headed.
Yeah.
That this one impulsive decision is going to lead to a whole host of other question marks around your character, around your commitment to value people, ethical behaviors.
Your ethics.
That's under fire now. They will regret this. They're going to regret this move. And you know what, Tommy? What I love, here's what I love. I love this about power as we draw to a close. Power feels real comfortable up front and dominance that we were justified in doing what we did. That's all good. See how long you can hold on to that. I like it. See how long it lasts. I like it. You like it. I love it. But I'm going to tell you, that's not going to be sustainable. It's not. You're going to have to come back crawling, and she's going to be the only voice that can vindicate you. It will be her voice that vindicates you or starts a whole move against you. She can go before Congress on you, this new Congress. So I think that they're going to regret this one, man. And Tommy, I appreciate the time that we have committed to this wise dialogue today. You and I will both have to rewind the tape and pick up on the second and third try through some insights around what this means for us as well, because I think there's something in this for all of us.
I agree. Eric, it's been a rich conversation, a rich morning once again. I know in our next couple of weeks with the Christmas holiday, we'll lighten the conversation, more joyful. Sometimes we have to have that deep dive in the strategic and cognitive style. And we're diverse as well, so we can always elevate to less serious and kind of just some casual conversation. That's what this is about, diversity conversations.
Absolutely. Tommy, I appreciate you, man. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
You too.